Just setting it up now. We're live. So kia ora everyone. We are live on YouTube, and I will really encourage everyone who's live right now to go into our chat box and really let us know who you are and where you're connecting in from today. So get in that chat box and let us know. So I'll hand over to the team at Atumai.
Sa Tauiwi mo whamaolalo tunu mai le tua e ala I le tatalu. Lo mātou te mā o le langi, o le vi inga whaanetanga ma whamanu I lau awhionga. A wā ua e taitaina mai le soifua ma le ola o lau whanau I le nei fo I vaengo le aso. O le mātou tatalo, ia e whaatasi mai lau mātou whaamoemoe. Fua e mai le oa I manatu, a o mātou Fitu whae ini au wala e whaalelei ai o mātou au nanga mo mātou atu. E ala foi I le nei au nanga. Whaatasi mai mafuta mai. Lingi mai o whamanianga I lo whanau. O le talo le nā e ala tu swafa Yesu. Amen.
So, no mai, haere mai, kia ora and welcome everyone to our live webinar, and it is an absolute pleasure for us to introduce today the team at Atumai. We're in this virtual realm, and as always we like to acknowledge the Indigenous lands that we all stand on, and whether they're here in Aotearoa or from wherever else you might be joining us today. We have a fantastic presentation. I'm really excited about today's presentation. It is the fantastic team from Atumai who are part of LEVA, and they're going to tell us and talk to us about their key learnings, their journey in developing a prevention program and a prevention initiative, sorry, not program, a national prevention strategy for Pacifica young people. So I warmly want to welcome Elizabeth, Nale and Mirafora to this TOAH NNEST webinar space. So without further ado, over to you.
Malo, Miriam. Thank you, Miriam, for that warm welcome. Talofa lava, everybody, and welcome to Atumai's webinar, Preventing Violence for Pacifica Young People. My name is Elizabeth Mati, and I'm the Senior Manager for Atumai. I'm also a clinical psychologist, and before coming over to Atumai in January this year, I was working in Counties Manukau for Bakatoa, and it was actually a Pacifica service for young people and their families. And I worked with a lot of young people that have actually experienced sexual harm. Before that, I spent some time at corrections. So I'm Apakasi, I'm half Samoan, half Palangi. My dad hails from Sa'anapu in Opolu, and my mum descends from England. Welcome to our webinar.
Awesome, everyone. My name is Nale Tafa, and I'm the researcher for the Atumai team. I come from a large top. There's 10 of us, and my family comes from Hawaii and Kolomotua, and my mom comes from Tongatapu. And yeah, my value, Pacifica value that I is tauhiwa and whakaapapa, so respect, and then honoring the space that relates.
And I forgot my Pacifica value, which is family or ainga. So family is everything to me. I have 2 beautiful daughters and a very wonderful partner.
Whaatalo whāturi pa ia ma le malo Samoa ma Aotearoa o loo whaafonga mai le nei fo vaenga le aso ma lo le soifua ma langi mama. My name is Airupotea Taituunga Mirafora Mata Afa Committee. I am Samoan, yes, from the beautiful islands of Samoa, the heart of Polynesia. And my father comes from the villages of Ufilufi and Sasatele Falealili. My mother comes from the beautiful village of Falelima in Savai'i. My work here, my role here at LEVA is Senior Project Coordinator. And the value that I live by the most is Tautua, service, which is giving to others.
Okay. So in terms of the overview of our webinar today, I'm going to talk a bit about LEVA and the Atumai program, in particular the youth part of it. Then I'll hand it over to the lovely Murafora, who will talk about cultural competency, and then over to Nale, who will talk about our evaluation framework. Okay. So LEVAR is a national Pacifica NGO, and our purpose is really to support Pacifica families and communities to unleash their full potential. We support this by carefully designing and developing evidence-based tools, information, knowledge, and support services for the best possible health and wellbeing outcomes. And we do this all while recalling our Pacifica values. And we have a thing at LEVAR where it's all about traditional values, contemporary execution. We also believe that the solutions lie within our communities, and we work alongside sports clubs, education centres, church, and other relevant groups that have large population of Pacifica people. So we just really want to ensure that the right knowledge, skills, and information is reaching the right people at the right time. Okay, so we do this by firstly equipping communities. So equipping communities by providing education, resources, training, and support to Pacifica communities that enhance wellbeing. We also support the workforce by growing the capacity and capability of the Pacifica workforce, enhancing the cultural competency of services to ensure that our Pacifica people are getting the best service, and also through mobilizing leadership. So we're supporting others, Pacifica leaders kind of coming through the ranks, and also working in collaboration with our partners. And we have 4 major portfolios. So that's mental health and addiction, suicide prevention, disability support and coordination, and more recently, our violence prevention, which we'll be talking about today. So a big thing at LEVAR is about collaboration. So not just collaborating, but actually moving into actually doing things, working together as a partnership and acting together. For an example, just this year alone, we worked with the NRL and partnered with their welfare and education managers to actually deliver our mental wealth through the Auckland Rugby League clubs. And we're hopefully looking at actually doing some of our Atumai stuff with them as well. We also have a good partnership with Home Care Medical, and they provide a lot of our clinical support. So after workshops, when people are doing online learning tools, if they need actually further support, they can actually go to online chats, they can do text, and they can do calls, or through to trained counsellors. So that leads us to the Atumai program. So this is New Zealand's first national violence prevention program, which actually focuses on Pacifica young people with an emphasis on sexual violence. It targets young people 16 to 24 years of age, but it also has a life course approach, which we'll talk about. So I came here in January this year, and before I came, there was actually a lot of work done over 18 months, but probably even 2 years of research looking at how we're going to design this prevention program. These included things like literature reviews. We engaged over 50 stakeholder organisations from Pacifica young people, Pacifica community groups, NGOs, people working in the field. Because what we know is that a lot of the research and literature, there's a lot of scarcity or paucity of research around Pacifica. So we actually had to go out into the community and investigate as well. We also looked at government data sets to see what the current state of play is for Pacifica young people. We had 2 standout discoveries. So we know that Pacifica people actually have some different risk and protective factors for violence than the general population of New Zealand. For example, we know that there is shame. There's a lot of shame that is experienced by young people and people in general that have experienced sexual harm. But with Pacifica, the shame tends to be more intensified in a context of a culture of silence. We also know that, cultural identity is a strong protective factor for Pacifica young people, and when they're actually disconnected, that can also be a risk factor. Breakdowns in intergenerational communication. While we know that communication within families is key to kind of young people's well-being, with Pacifica people, there's more disconnect. So, in terms of parents and grandparents and young people, there's more of a cultural divide, which actually causes further breakdowns in that intergenerational communication. And we know if we support that, that can be a really big protective factor for our young people seeking help when they need it. And the other thing that we're kind of looking at is cultural distortions. Not everyone likes that term because it implies that, you know, our culture is distorted. But that's not what we're kind of getting at. What we're saying is that actually our true culture, our values, our Pacifica values have been distorted and at times have even been used to justify the use of violence. So a big part of our thing is actually challenging those cultural distortions and getting Pacifica young people to live by our Pacifica values in the truer form. So in terms of state of play for Pacifica young people, we are 2 times more likely to experience sexual abuse or coercion, 3 times more likely to be exposed to family violence. And we all know that a lot of sexual violence is not reported to the police, and this is the same for Pacifica young people. 3/4 is not reported to police. Pacifica children are 2 times more likely to be physically punished compared to NZ Pākehā. We are overrepresented in the number of home-related assault claims, and our total cost of assault claims is disproportionately higher too. And when we actually do receive help and get claims, the cost per claim is higher, suggesting that we're seeking help maybe at a later stage, and also that maybe our issues are also more severe. And we tend to access support at lower rates. Okay, so the Atu Mai program is a primary prevention program. And the main focus of that program is in primary prevention. So actually looking at targeting and supporting young people before violence actually occurs. The Atu Mai is actually based on the Cook Island proverb, Aroha atu I te aroha mai. So love flowing outwards and love flowing inwards. So this proverb was actually chosen by Pacifica young people. And really it's based on Pacifica values of reciprocity and love. And like I said, this program is all about getting and supporting young people to live more by their values. So there are some kind of key enablers in our program design that actually are supporting us to effect change. So firstly, it is a systems approach, a socio-ecological approach, and it's a multi-level intervention to kind of target those different levels to address the root cause, the risk factors and protective factors for violence for Pacifica young people. There's a lot of psychologists here now at LeVar, and we are really focused on behaviour change. So we're making sure that, you know, we're providing psychoeducation, and more importantly, we're incorporating motivational interviewing techniques, we're incorporating tools so that Pacifica young people, you know, see the importance of changing, but then also we're increasing their self-efficacy so that they have the tools to be able to change as well. We are youth-centred, like I said, 16 to 24 years of age, but it is a life course approach, and we have parenting programs in development as well. And like all of LeVar's programs, we are based on the 3 C's. That's making sure that we are clinically safe, we are culturally sensitive, and we incorporate cultural values, and also that we are in the community, because as I said, we do believe that the solutions lie within the community. And we're wanting to upscale and doing this so by providing digital solutions. So all of our Atu Mai content will eventually be available online, and we have got some stuff online already. So we are a small team, and here at LeVar, we do like to say that we punch above our weight. I think in total there's about 20 of us. There's 5 of us here on the Atu Mai team, and you know, and to get the scale that we actually need, but then also to increase engagement, we take a community education approach. So that means training people, Pacifica leaders in the community to actually deliver program content. So this could be people like school guidance counsellors, it could be church youth leaders, social workers, people within the context that are actually at the cold front working with our Pacifica young people. And we hope to have more of these trainings early in 2020. So as mentioned, it is based on a systems framework. So we are all about building relationships and connections and collaboration with other agencies. We are looking at partnerships to kind of work together to be able to support the community effectively. All of our programs, yes, are based on clinical and cultural values and research, and there's a lot of co-design as well. In terms of scale, we're doing that by our community education approach and also taking things online. And we're providing support to current providers through providing cultural competency. So in terms of our areas of focus, so if we look at the young person, there are three main areas that we're looking at focusing on, and that's strengthening self-worth through culture. So that's getting young people to know the benefits of actually being Pacifica and being diverse. And then it's also getting them to explore their Pacifica values and actually making a cultural plan to actually live more by those values. The next one is enhancing respectful relationships. And that's similar, some of that content is similar to what mainstream would provide, like consent and upstander and having respectful relationships. But I suppose the difference that we provide is actually embedding our values in that and starting off with actually getting young people to understand about what lewa is and having respectful relationships generally, you know, with your peers, with your family, before moving into intimate partner relationships. Sorry, we know that in Pacifica, talking about these types of things can be taboo. It can be sensitive. So we need to make sure that actually we ease into it, providing a lot of kind of support and for young people before going straight into intimate partner relationships and consent. The next one that we're doing is intergenerational communication, and that's supporting young people to be able to have empathy for the older generations, but also the tools to be able to ask and seek support from their elders when needed, and to also be able to have better relationships. Within the parenting modules, we'll actually do we'll do the similar thing with the parents so that they can actually have more empathy for young people and have the tools to better engage their young people more. So in terms of family, the strengthening family relationship skills. So we're going to be providing parenting support for parents with children, but then also adolescents. We're also going to have a module just for dads, and then a module on engaging, parenting in the first 1,000 days. And then if you move over to the community side, we have the cultural competency stuff that Fora will talk about. Increasing access to support through psychoeducation and awareness building, and engaging Pacifica communities to be a part of that change. Okay, so as I mentioned, we do a lot of co-design. So all of our modules go through co-design. We like to co-design, you know, at the conceptual phase, pre-online phase, and then post-online. And we like to think of our all of our content as being iterative and being able to change and move with the times. You know, we're asking young people, what do they actually need to know, and how and in what way do they want to be able to learn it? Nale will talk a little bit more about some of the co-design as well. Okay, so now we move on to the actual modules online. So you can go to www.atumai.nz, and these modules are actually for free. Anyone can register. And currently we have 2 modules live. That's the I Am Cultural Identity and the Respectful Relationships module. So the I Am module is all about strengthening self-worth through Pacific cultural identity. It gets young people to be able to explore what Pacifica values are and the ones that they relate to. They learn about actually the benefits of being able to walk in multiple worlds. They learn to actually live by their values more and using values to actually problem solve. And then they have a cultural kind of I Am identity plan where you put your cultural values into action. And then we have the respectful partner relationships that's also live. And that's all about how, you know, learning about what makes up, a healthy partner relationship. And what we've done in this module is we've related it to actually Pacifica values and how we operate in a relationship utilizing living by those Pacifica values. Well, we know that some of the research shows that, you know, what we need to do is that, you know, when you ask Pacifica people what is one of their most important values, what often comes up is respect. And in particular, respect for elders, respect for their siblings, brothers, respect for their sisters. So what we're trying to do is actually get that respect more generally, for it to be more generally applied, and in particular into intimate partner relationships. We also teach young people about what constitutes an unhealthy and abusive relationship. And we give them some skills to improve their talking and listening skills with links out as well for further information. So all of these online learning modules as well will actually be workshops. So we do the online learning modules in the workshops, and we do that through actually expanding some of this content and going more deeper. Okay, and now I'm going to hand over to the lovely Marifora.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizabeth Mati. So in case you've forgotten, my name is Ayoluputete Tuunga Mta'afa Committee, and my part of this presentation is to look at the cultural competency engaging Pacifica. So with Atumai, as mentioned by our lovely senior manager, we look at prevention. But then also with Atumai, we want to look at the aftercare so that we can effectively look after our communities. So the idea is to deliver a cultural competency program to services that specialize in supporting victims or survivors of violence and sexual violence. The hope is that through Atumai, once we have motivated our tangata Pacifica, our tupulanga, our youth to access these services will then take care of them and look after them well. We are aware that the people who work in these services will most likely be non-Pacifica, so we want to help them take care of tangata Pacifica. So our cultural competency program, we have two parts. We have part one, which is called Engaging Pacifica, which is what I'm going to talk about in this section. And then we have part two, which we are currently drafting up. So part one of our cultural competency program is called Engaging Pacifica. And this is actually LEVA's cultural competency program. And we are using this as our foundational program because we think that it fits well with us. So in part one, we look at LEVA. These are the 4 key things that we look at in our Engaging Pacifica Part 1 Cultural Competency Program. We look at LEVA, Engaging Pacifica, we look at Pacifica culture and values, and then we look at some case studies to really back up what we talk about in our program.
All right, technical difficulties, just changing the slide. There we go.
So the need, why is there a need for cultural competency programs? There is a definite need for cultural competency program. Pacifica people are featured, as mentioned by Dr. Elizabeth, they are featured disproportionately in violence and sexual violence statistics, more so than the general population. And what's more about Pacifica is that there are low numbers of Pacifica accessing these services. And you might want to ask, why are there low numbers? One of the major reasons for this is cultural reasons. For example, as mentioned before, the shame or whakama is one of the biggest reasons why our Pacifica youth and people don't access these services. Pacifica victims would most likely not access formal support services, but they would prefer accessing informal support services such as family, friends, and church minister. So it's that cultural shame. And not only that, but it's the Pacifica traditional and cultural system based on the notion of community, where the community overrides your own individual needs. So these are just some examples. So if something happens to a Pacifica person, they look at their family and the shame that it will bring on their family. And so they would tend to be more silent about their own needs. They wouldn't access any services because of this. They look at their family and they think, oh, okay, my family is going to be looked at in a really bad way by our community if I come out with this, so I will not say anything and I will be silent. And so this is the reason why there is a huge need for cultural competency programs, because culturally competent practitioners can increase engagement, treatment retention, and effectiveness. And also there are some legislation drivers, such as the Health Practitioners Competency and Assurance Act 2003. So there is a need for cultural competency programs, and we try to address this through our part 1 and part 2 of cultural competency. So in our program, if you are to come into our program, it's giving you a Pacifica lens and worldview of how they see the world and why they act the way that they do. So Pacifica, just a quick snapshot of Pacifica and Aotearoa in 2013 census, 295,000 identified as Pacifica people, which is 7% of the total population. That is a huge percent. And if we break that down some more, the 7 major groups of Pacifica in New Zealand are Samoan, Cook Island Māori, Tongan, Niuean, Fijian, Tokelauan, and Tuvaluan. One of the foundations of our cultural competency program that we share with our the people who come through is this notion of lewa. So lewa, translated literally to English, means the space. And that naturally there is a space between everything. There's a space between people, there is a space between things, environments, and even spirituality. But what makes this space really special in the Pacifica is that it's not a space that is void or empty. This is the space that connects or relates you with your surroundings. And this is the same thing in between people, environment, and spirituality. So when you come into our cultural competency program, we want to share what to expect in that first point of contact. When you first come in that va, in that space, what to expect. And so how to tausi or tauhiwa look after the space, because how well you look after the space is how well the outcomes will be. And so that's why this program is really important, because the VA is actually not just in Samoa, it's pan-Pacific. So it's understood across the Pacifica. And so once you understand the VA and how you engage and look after the space or relationship is how well everything else will be. And so also in our cultural competency program, we look at the Pacifica values that are shared across the Pacifica. We have values that are shared across, but that we are also mindful that each Pacifica nation has their own distinct language, culture, and way of doing things. So one of the Pacifica values shared across that we look at in our program as well are things like respect. As mentioned by my colleagues in the beginning, each one of us talked about one of our values. And so the other values that we would look at is respect, family, spirituality, service, honesty, humility, collective, and love. And so after we have a look at the Pacific worldview and their lens of how and why they act the way that they do, we look at some case studies of this first point of contact. It's really important, the relationship in between people. And so this brings us, that is cultural competency part 1. It's providing the foundations of how to engage in this VA, in this space, in this relationship. And then cultural competency 2.0 is, we are giving you the question of what would you like to know? What would you like to know about engaging with Pacifica? Is there anything else that you would like to know that is not covered in part 1? And so is there anything else?
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, so that we have been, as we're rolling out our 1.0 cultural competency, we have been asking participants as well, you know, what they would like to know. The people that we are providing this stuff to, it does range. So some of the people are actually frontline in the workforce. Our most recent workshop was actually with rape prevention. So we do know that is actually, there may be a lot of different things that people want to know as well. So we're currently developing 2.0 with experts in the field as well. But we are asking non-Pacifica
actually, what would you like to know? What would help you with the work that you do at Pacifica? Because as we know, not a lot of Pacifica are being seen to by non-Pacifica, which we are very grateful for, and we want to be able to support them to do the work with Pacifica people. Thanks.
Right.
Malo, thank you, Liz. Thank you, Fora. And I'd just like to acknowledge you who are still continuing on with us. Malo Alpito. So yes, to reiterate, if you are interested in our cultural competency engaging Pacifica, please keep a tab open on all of our Facebook and website page where we routinely update information on our workshops as well as registrations. So malo lele, welcome. My name is Nale, and my part of the session, I've never seen anyone snooze, because who wouldn't be extremely excited about data research and evaluations? And so beyond the integral reporting requirements of indicating Atumai's effectiveness, Atumai's outcomes, Atumai's impacts, which all flow into the performance story, our research and evaluation framework needed to make space alongside this performance story, our Pacific story, and that flows into one another. And what I mean by this is, for example, our intergenerational communication, a module which we're currently developing. During the content design, there will be evidence-based, evidence building, literature review, environmental scope. And as I sat behind the grand multi-database engines of PsycInfo and Scopus and Google Scholar, what typically happened was for the topic area, intergenerational communication, I would enter into the engine, intergenerational communication, experiences by Pacifica, and all the related synonyms. And although there were hits, there were also significant paucities in the literature. So what I did predominantly give back was intergenerational communication, generically, general, excluding Pacific, within the workplace setting. So intergenerational communication in the workplace setting. And while this was insightful in allowing us to access insights into different models and frameworks, dynamics, how baby boomers prefer this modality over this, or millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, the content was not specific enough to be relevant, relatable, and therefore impact meaningful change for our Pacifica communities. And so in light of this dilemma, we knew that anecdotally, Pacifica communities, they can feel this paucity. They understand intergenerational communication skills. They have in-depth knowledge, they've built the skills, they know the workaround, and they have mastery over intergenerational communication. And they know these things because they've been doing IC since day dot. And so that's probably the thing that I love about my research and evaluation role the most, is that our Atumai evaluation and research frameworks have made space for the oratory of our community's narrative and stories. And so here at the Harakeke House, through whanau focus groups or talanoa interviews, our community would come through, would break bread, and through the inflows and outflows of conversations, it was there that the specific content, idiosyncrasies and the nuances, just the gems and the powerful tools would begin to emerge that were both relevant and relatable to our Pacifica cultures and values. And we know that traditionally, Pan-Pacific, our culture's longevity as well as transferred knowledge and liberation comes through the oratory, it comes through the storytelling. And it's been an honor to be able to sit there and listen to them express their experiences and be experts of their own experience. And so it really was the merge of the two, where we got the evidence base, reviewed the literature, and then alongside this began to fill in the spaces with the Pacifica narratives. And so a key learning for me was, and our team, when you're wanting authentic knowledge, you need authentic engagement. And why would you not explore and access and engage with the primary source? Why wouldn't you engage the emic insider perspective, which is our Pacifica communities? And our chief executive says something to our team all the time, and it really did resonate with the engagement, and that is, we can only move at the speed of trust. And this was very true when listening to their narratives, because the depth that we stepped into was much more than just establishing rapport. It did require a deeper trust. And by being trusted, our team, firstly, a key principle was that we honor that trust in all our processes. And secondly, that Atumai serve our communities and their narratives by weaving together programs and services that were relatable, that were relevant, and that would positively impact the space in which they occupy. So I'll just go through the evaluation framework. So we do have mixed methods, qualitative and quantitative, and they really nicely synergistically balance each other out. Models that I have chosen elements from include the results-based accountability, in particular, who is better off and how are our Pacifica families and communities better off. We then have the Kakala model by Konai Helu Thaman, and in particular, it's a Pacific model where you're creating a garland and it's the whole idea of gifting it back. And so during Luva, all the information and the evaluation that we do begin to yield, it is given back to the community and by way of useful resources, conducive programs and services, and even just letting them know about the findings. And then we have systems thinking alongside Synergia, and this is the whole idea that bird's eye view, looking at the system, you see that behind every trend and pattern, there is a structure and a system that supports or backs that. And it's structures and systems that are either deliberately, or unintentionally set up. And what I love about the systems thinking is that you begin to see that in isolation and silos, very little will be moved or shifted. But in fact, it's in the collaboration and it's in the working together across organizations, across sectors, that we begin to see change. Now, you see the Atumai sign up page, and to the website, the atumai.co.nz, see that it does require your own. And so here is where we're able to capture just like the reach and ensure that we get the feedback and know who it's by to begin to tailor some of our material. So this is the data collection process, and there's nothing too marvelous about this. It's pretty straightforward, and we ensure to keep it straightforward and consistent. So setting up the objectives, and then alongside the objectives, we have the key metrics and the most reasonable proxies to begin to measure that. Co-design has been so much fun, and in fact, during our workshops, these photos are from last week with the University of Otago Pacifica Students Association, and you get that real-time feedback during the co-design, like the amount of times that they've laughed at some of the slang and the phrases that we still think are youth and hip. It just really keeps us in check. Then during the e-learning and workshops, we're able to capture feedback and get the feedback in the back-end system through real-time or near real-time, through Google Analytics, but also the platform that we hold. And then post, there are optional survey monkeys. We're hoping to begin to implement push notifications where we can check in 3 months and 6 months. Say, for example, their cultural legacy statement, where youth are able to pay it forward. We would love to check in how would they like to be supported in this, in their language, or connecting in with other Pacific cultural groups. And then the ongoing focus group in Talanoa, which that's probably what I love the most. Beyond the collation, it's the cleaning, the analysis, and then what are we going to do with this data? So I'll talk about that in the next few slides. So evaluation, monitoring, and reporting allows for so many multifaceted different purposes, but the one that I've really wanted to emphasize, and one that is an ethos that we cling to and we hope to cling to throughout Atumai story, is that where we are honored and we are blessed to be enter into the space and hear chapters and chapters of narratives from the people of the migration, the children of the migration, even their children, intergenerationally being able to hear what it's like on the daily or throughout the decades. I think it's an honor, and we have such a responsibility to be able to tell their story and represent our communities, and be able to give it back. So I'm going to go through a bit of our reach. Since last year, mid last year actually, we've had 750 face-to-face contacts with the I Am module, strengthening self-worth for cultural identity, as well as our respectful relationships module. We've surpassed actually today the 2,000 registrations, and we've had over 40,000 people access our TOAH platforms. Key learning is collaboration is key, and again with the system thinking, without the interactions and the collaborations with the other organizations, reach is going to just steadily decline, and we're wanting to engage our Pacific youth. They're amazing, and so there are ample initiatives and campaigns that we have collaborated with. For example, Polyfest, secondary schools, different youth groups, church youth groups and sports clubs, and also upon request, word of mouth and social media. I won't get into this too much, but these are some of the qualitative feedback that we get back. I'll probably just read the first one. I love this module, referring to I Am, and I understand why the cultural legacy statement is so important. Cultural legacy statement is what you work up through the I Am module. You come away feeling empowered and proud to be Pacifica, which is awesome. Keep up the great work. And then just to summarize with our key learnings, the paucity in literature, don't fret. What we've found has been very beneficial to kind of fill this is co-design, whanau, talking, talanoa, listening. Also the ongoing interaction with youth groups to aid our learnings, hear their narratives and access insider perspectives, and to capture their story and transition this into meaningful differences. And one example for this is on our relationship spectrum module, what's typically still categorized as healthy is the situation of you get into an argument with a partner and they physically stand at the door and intimidate you and wait till you pass by. And a lot of the Pacific during youth that we had in our co-design would say that that was, you know, healthy, no sweat. And so we delved a little deeper, and these were their justifications. It was, well, they know that if I get out and I drive, that's actually more dangerous to me. That will cause more harm. Or he likes to process things then and there. He just wants to ensure that we leave on good terms. So it's really, those are the gems. And again, report will do, but it is that deeper trust. We move at the speed of trust. Clear objectives to determine metrics, allow space framework for the narrative to be continued to be told, ongoing co-design and quality assurance, and then keep processes clear and consistent.
So, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Nale. I love data. I don't know about you guys, but I think it's always important to make sure you have a really good evaluation system in place and proper measures to make sure that we actually are making a difference for our communities. We have spent a lot of time developing this program, and we want to make sure that it is making a meaningful difference. So that does take us to the end of our presentation to you. So whakatai tele lava, thank you very much from all of us. And I think now we are going to potentially look at some questions. Miriam, I might get you. Okay.
Well done. What an amazing presentation. I was frantically scribbling down so many notes of golden gems that I learned from you. And in particular, I really wanted to echo what you already said, is that you punch above your weight, and I think you really have. What you've presented, the way that Atumai has been developed, in particular, its commitment to your communities and to the young people in your communities, and to hear their voices, and the respect and the kind of tension, and really actually role modeling that what you're talking about in terms of Levar, that sacred space between you and those in the community really came through, and both how you're thinking about the program and designing it. So I learnt so much, and I'm really appreciative of all the amazing work.
Thank you.
Few questions coming through, and And the first one was very early on in your piece, and someone asked, what are the some of the causatives that put Pacifica young people at twice the risk of experiencing sexual violence? If you could kind of go a little bit more in depth with that.
Wow, that's a really good question, eh? And we know when we think about causatives, I'm guessing that we're talking about risk and protective factors, right? And we did talk about the research not really showing or singling out Pacifica people and looking at their risk and protective factors in general. So what we did was go out into the community, and while we looked through the research, actually went out into the community and asked people that were working with Pacifica young people. So while a lot of our stuff is anecdotal, we do stand by it, and we think this program, by addressing some of those, will actually show the validity of some of those things. So things, I think, like if you think about risk factors in general for sexual violence, I think Pacifica people do tend to have higher rates of the general risk factors anyway. For example, poverty, would be a big one. We do experience higher rates of poverty. So I think not only do we experience higher rates of the general kind of mainstream risk factors, we do also have probably some unique ones of our own. And some of those risk factors too, I think we experience them more intensely, or they have a bigger impact. So we talked about, the culture of shame and the culture of silence. I think for Pacifica, we experience that, and that has potentially a greater impact on us, especially the culture of the silence. I think it was the Ombudsman for Samoa just recently, in the last couple of years, went over to Samoa and looked at the sexual violence rates, for example, in Samoa. And they were high. They were much higher than New Zealand, extremely high. And this culture of silence in Pacifica, I think, has in some ways perpetuated sexual violence and has allowed it to continue. There hasn't been enough consequence for it. But then also, I think if we look at cultural distortions, and we know people always ask about gender roles in Pacific, and we know that gender roles have strong gender roles are a risk factor for sexual violence. In Pacifica, we do have quite strong Pacifica gender roles. And while I'll be honest, I don't necessarily agree that Pacifica gender roles in general lead to violence. I think it's the distortion of those gender roles, because actually the abuse of power. We know that in any system, right, with power, there comes corruption. And sometimes within the Pacifica culture, I think there has been that element of corruption and the distortion of cultural values and the distortion of gender roles. Because males were always the protector of the family and the nurturer of not just your partner, but of the woman's siblings, of the elderly. But it's been distorted now, where they kind of respect has become one-sided, when it was always supposed to be given and received, but most importantly given. We know respect, and I talk about this a lot, because the idea of respect combined with humility, respect was always to be given to someone else, but what it's turned into, it's been used as a justification. They didn't respect me, or it is my right. Sorry, I am waffling a bit. Did you guys want to add anything to that?
Well, I think you summarized it perfectly. I have nothing to add to that.
So in terms of the causatives, I think short answer, we do have higher rates of the mainstream ones, and we have some unique ones as well, being kind of the culture of silence, potentially the distortion of cultural values and gender roles.
Great, thank you. And I think that's really important in terms of the different cultural domains of gender, and really to kind of bear that, consider that in terms of any approach that in terms of prevention that we want to take, that we do need to understand what does that mean for the cultural group that is trying to prevent sexual violence, and not make those assumptions that if they're rigid, is that always a risk factor, and what are protective elements in that. I think that's a really valid reflection point for all of us. So next, we've got a few more questions to get through. Is how come e-learning and online modules for young people, and did the young people kind of request them? How did that come about?
I don't want to just answer all of them. Do you want to?
We just know of diverse ranges of modalities we can access more Pacifica youth. And oftentimes when things are created and then delivered, you'll find that like a common trend or prevailing trend is that Pacifica youth aren't using that. And so in our co-design, there was a lot of discussions around some of the sensitive topics and even some shame about not knowing much about their culture. But these were things that they wanted to do in their own time, in their own space. And so some of our modalities are paired, where we do have the e-learning and workshop, but it is upon request. And it was during the co-design where we sat down with the Pacifica youth, and with their digital savviness and digital competency, we figured why not also make it available, because that's a world that they exist in as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to it. So it's definitely about scalability, but we know young people actually preferring online now. And if you think about access to services, and one of the reasons being the shame, that actually being able to access this information in your own time, privately and confidentially, like actually, we wanted to really get the information out to as many people as possible, and for no one to kind of not be able to access it. And a lot of good feedback that I think Nale has mentioned in one of the slides.
Great, thank you. The next question is more around cultural competency, and the person asks, as a sexual violence service in Christchurch, specialising in working with kids and youth with no local Pacifica sexual violence service, how best do they go about seeking guidance in terms of their clinical work when working with children and their ainga and families around sexual violence?
Do they have anything similar to the Motto advisory? So
Yeah. I mean, we would always recommend accessing cultural advisors, but I just want to say that it is a field where there are not many Pacifica people who hold both cultural and clinical knowledge, and we have found that even in developing our cultural competency 2.0, that the experts in the field, there's very few of them. So I know that they are quite rare. So I'm not surprised that in Christchurch you're finding it hard to find people. I think Lavar has a lot of resources online. To go to Lavar, we've got a lot of not just our Atu Mai modules, but there's a lot of stuff online in our resource bank if you're wanting to learn about Pacifica culture. But for a more of a supervisory thing, I would suggest seeking out some sort of cultural supervision.
And our Engaging Pacifica, they sometimes go through the regions.
And especially within your local area, there will be people that you could go to consult with. And also with our EP, we travel as well. So if you are wanting to have that type of consultation and help, you could go through our webpage, and we have the list of dates there, or you could just email through, and we'll be happy to help you. So please don't feel alone. We are here to help. Remember, it's a collaboration. So everyone is here to help look after and serve our communities.
Yes, good point. Please give us an email at atumai.lavar.nz, and we could actually, maybe come down to Christchurch and do a cultural competency module. We are currently looking at our work plan for the next part of the year and booking in workshops. So if there's a big enough group, we could also come down and do a cultural competency workshop.
And I think this will be great as well for our 2.0 as well. So we could talk with you about do our 1.0, and then talk some more about what more would you need from us, and then we could help you some more with that.
Okay.
And that brings me to a great plug in terms of the evaluation form. I've shared it already in the chat once, but I'll share it again, because that does actually specifically ask the question that the Atu Mai team wanted in our evaluation form. So you can directly either send them an email directly or put it in the evaluation form. What do you want to know in a cultural competency 2.0 type training? What were the things that you as practitioners out there are seeking to learn? So just put that in the chat room right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next question is quite similar, but not from a clinical perspective, but from a prevention perspective. How can we as sexual violence primary prevention providers partner with Lavar? Similar thing of, emailing you and connecting with you and seeing where that goes?
Yeah. Please email us, and and we can arrange a time to meet up, catch up, and talk about how we can support each other, and most importantly, how Lava can support. A big part of the Atumai program is about system change. So we are wanting to support people out there.
And I love that you're talking about systems change. It's been a passion of mine over the last couple of years of really delving in, and I was hearing you before going, yes, when you have that bird's eye view, you can really start exploring how the system informs and reinforces, or where the catalyst of change is. So that's been a really exciting part of listening to this presentation of how robust and broad it all was. The whole strategy is in this prevention prevention initiative. The last question is pornography consumption something that's been a factor, particularly thinking of young people abusing other young people, which we've seen a reported rise in? So have you, in your experience of co-design and working with the young people, had many conversations about pornography and its impacts?
So we haven't taken that into co-design yet, but it was one of the 10 prioritized risk factors that we're looking at addressing. So definitely we've done some work with NetSafe as well. We know that Pacifica young people, we access online, we use online the most, but we're the least safe.
The highest online competency or digital competency, but the lowest levels of online health and safety.
Yeah,
which is really that's quite worrying. Yeah.
So it's definitely in our work plan, and it's definitely something that we hope to produce some resources on, potentially even workshop it and do some co-design. So it's there. We've been thinking about it, and it has been included in some of our research, but we're yet to produce any content yet. So definitely. But we have started creating relationships with people like NetSafe.
That's great to hear that it is in your work plan. So just for those in the chat room, if there's any last pieces of information you'd like to, there's lots of kind of acknowledging all three of you and your amazing presentation coming through. Like there's also someone saying that's really good to know that you do have pornography in your work plan. Other people saying that they'll definitely be in touch. So yeah, lots happening in the chat room. If there are no last questions coming in through the group, we can start wrapping this up. And is there any way you would like to close today's session? As we opened with a prayer, did you want to close with a prayer?
Yeah, we will close with a prayer, but before that, we just want to thank you again so much, Miriam, for providing us this opportunity. We do want to get Atumai out to as many people as possible, and we want to be as supportive as possible. And thank you all to everyone that has watched us. This has been this is all our first experience of a webinar, so it has been a new experience, a good one though. So we really enjoyed it, and I'll hand it over to TOAH, who will close for us. Thank you.
We will end with a prayer. Whaitele lo lofa malawanga lei wai un manuia mato fa mo ne nei fo vai ngalaso mato talo ia no fa manuia e lau fa nau fa tasi mai e fofuanga lo tsoe mo le nei aso awasa vi inga o le na le talo ala to swafa Yesu. Amen.
Thank you.
Malo, thank you so much.
See you everyone. Now have a wonderful day.